All right, thank you. Hello, everybody. I am the Federal Program Manager for University Fuel Services, as well as the Scientific Infrastructure Support for the CINR FOA, which includes reactor upgrades and general scientific infrastructure opportunities. You can go ahead to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about the kind of FOA overview, and then I'm going to jump into a little bit of a teaser of two preliminary FOAs. We will not be going into detail of those two FOAs today, but we'll mainly be focusing on the reactor upgrades and GSI, or general scientific components. I'll touch on the NSUF integration and then go into each area of the reactor upgrades component as well as the general scientific component. Followed up with some best practices, some pitfalls to avoid, and finally some contact information. So if you want to go to the next slide. So some FOA highlights. The funding mechanism will be supplied by headquarters or DOE's NE, and the grants will be issued by Idaho or DOE Idaho. Like I mentioned before, the two funding opportunities are for reactor upgrades and general scientific infrastructure. And you can find the FOA at grants.gov or submit your applications at the typical NEUP.gov website. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay. So some important dates, like we mentioned before, the FOA release date has been changed to the week of June 5th. With the infrastructure support, infrastructure FOA, we will be having applications due on August 24th, and with an anticipated award announcement towards the March timeframe of next year in 2024. All right, next slide. So I'm going to touch on the two preliminary additional FOAs that will be coming out at a later date, which is in November. The first is the infrastructure revitalization funding opportunity. This is intended to be a competitively awarded consortium-led effort to establish or enhance nuclear research capabilities within the U.S. It's supposed to enhance the regional or national impact of our investment and foster the inclusion of disadvantaged communities. The current plan right now is to incorporate about $6 million into this funding opportunity. Again, this is preliminary, so details have not been finalized as of yet. Just wanted to put this on everyone's radar who is interested in the reactor upgrades and the GSI components of this funding opportunity, since it is somewhat related. If you want to go to the next slide, thank you. The other FOA is a reactor sharing and outreach funding opportunity. This is similar to a FOA that was released, I believe, in the early 2000s. And the purpose is to encourage universities with nuclear research reactors to share resources and capabilities to either like non-reactor educational institutions, obviously with an emphasis on supporting MSIs, and that'll include HBCUs and TCUs. It's mainly intended to give access and opportunities to universities that wouldn't necessarily have direct access for their particular programs. It'll also allow increased research opportunities of nuclear analytical techniques for both faculty and students. And the other component of this is to improve public outreach with respect to nuclear sciences, engineering, and technology. Aspects like including the local community to come and do tours along those same lines. Right now, we're planning on about 5 awards at $200,000 each for a total of about $1 million in total funding for this effort. And like the previous revitalization effort, this is planning to be released in November of 2023. All right, if you want to go ahead. So I'm going to refer back to the NSUF presentation earlier today, but let's take a step back, and now we're going back into the reactor upgrades and general scientific FOA. The NSUF component is still part of the GSI and RU infrastructure FOA here. And for all applicants, it is recommended to demonstrate an ability and willingness to join NSUF as a partner if an offer is extended. But in this case, for this year, there has been some minor changes to the FOA that we'll get into later in this discussion. Ultimately, it is up to NSUF to determine if the capability adds significant value to the DOE and may extend an invite. So I'll continue on to the next slide, actually. So as I mentioned before, the FOA organization is in two areas. There's university reactor upgrades, and then there's general scientific support. Right. For reactor upgrades, there hasn't been too much changes from last year to this year. The maximum individual award amount is $5 million. And then the expected award range is no more than $1.5 million. And we intend to award several smaller awards. And the estimated funding level for reactor upgrades is about $2.5 million. And like previous years, period of performance is about 1 year, and additional time may be requested. May be requested if justified. So for reactor upgrades, obviously educational institutions fueled by the DOE are eligible, and it'll be found in the FOA when it's released. Each institution is permitted to submit one application per research reactor they operate. So, for example, if you have 2 reactors on your campus, you can submit one for each. But typically, it's one application per research reactor and per university. Okay, go to the next slide. So this is where the changes have actually occurred from FY23 to FY24. It is the review criteria weighting. For the primary support is for safety and security. In this, the categories haven't changed. We've decreased the percentage, although it is still a majority percentage of that review criteria. And that is essentially to enhance the safety and performance or control of the research reactor, or increase the quality or safety and security of the facility. Well, this year, we've actually increased the other 3 categories, which is impact, utilization, and execution, by 5% each, so 20% in total for each of them. That the impact of the requested equipment or instrumentation will expand DOE research and training capabilities. Likewise, utilization, the amount of facility usage that's going on between faculty, students, graduate students, etc. And then finally, execution. There's more emphasis on how you plan to implement this within the full scope of the project, the timeliness, project completion, qualifications of personnel, the budget, and the feasibility. Okay, can you go to the next slide? As I mentioned before, the safety, security, and reliability of the facility is very important. We will still have a high priority for safety and security for each of the research reactors. There is still a focus on items such as spare parts and associated hardware. They will also be highly regarded. Some of the changes include the additional focus areas, which include nuclear, cyber, physical protection, and digital technologies that could be applied to nuclear reactors. And then the third focus area would also include capabilities for the development and safety assessments of small modular reactors. Okay, go to the next slide. All right, so now transitioning to general scientific infrastructure. This is there is some minor changes like reactor upgrades for this year, but overall the award, the maximum DOE funding per individual award is up to $5 million. We are anticipating maximum award size of about $250,000, and like reactor upgrades, a period of performance of 1 year. And you can also request additional time if needed. Eligibility, all U.S. universities are eligible to submit applications. It is limited this year to 1 application per institution for GSI in this FOA. There is a university cost match like last year of 1-to-1, and that is required after a quarter of $250,000. And the total estimated funding level in this for this FOA is going to be $2.5 million. Right, very similar to last year. All right, so the general requirements, they can be submitted. Application can be submitted for equipment, software, instrumentation, and non-reactor upgrade requests that support energy-related R&D or education. They are not, funding requests are not limited to, may include but are not limited to equipment and instrumentation for some specialized facilities, classrooms, teaching laboratories, and then non-reactor nuclear science and engineering research. So, and finally, infrastructure requests that support sharing of equipment across multiple universities or multiple campuses are also strongly encouraged. I know there is a little bit of a crossover there with the preliminary reactor sharing aspect, but this is also good that we are sharing across multiple regional locations. Okay, go to the next slide. So the GSI focus areas that are of strong interest this year are actually similar to the reactor upgrades. There is a strong interest in the nuclear cyber physical protection, as well as digital technologies that can be applied to advanced reactors. Capabilities for developing safety assessments of small modular reactors are also of interest. And then finally, similar to last year, we also are interested in capabilities to perform work on radioactive or irradiated materials. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So just as a reminder, NSUF provides access to high-performance computational resources at INL at no cost to users. Again, I'll refer back to the previous NSUF discussion. So if you can go to the next slide. This is where things are also different from previous years. The weightings here, the review criteria are the same, and the weightings are slightly different in this case. The impact, utilization, execution, and innovation are all equally weighted of 25%. The major change is that the NSUF priority is going to be changed from a component of that review criteria to a bonus point system. So we're planning to award up to 3% of whatever the maximum technical rating is based on NSUF priority. Again, like previous years, our focus is mainly to improve the impact, utilization, execution, and educational innovation for facilities requesting equipment. Impact, like before, is to facilitate or approve expanding ongoing DOE research and training capabilities, utilization as well. What are the plans for how is this facility going to be utilized, by who, how much, is also extremely important in that evaluation. Execution, can you actually get this equipment, get it functional within the period of performance, and demonstrate that we are investing in a good some good equipment. And then finally, obviously, educational innovation. What are the uses for this equipment for educational purposes? How are they going to impact undergraduate, graduate work, or classes? Okay. Please go to the next slide. Thank you. So unlike reactor upgrades, cost match is required for GSI projects that exceed $250,000. So there's like a dollar for dollar matching requirement. For example, the project's total cost was $350K. So the university was responsible for 50, and the DOE would share the 300. Right now, our anticipated award ranges will be about $250,000 for most application. Cost sharing is encouraged but not required for this FOA. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact the DOE ID contracting office. Okay, go to the next slide. So some pitfalls to avoid. The infrastructure requested should be discrete, definable, or capabilities that will do those 3 items. Support or maintain or enhance. Whoop, can go back one. Thank you. Capabilities or capacities to attract high quality students interested in the nuclear energy related studies, build the institution's research or educational capabilities, and enhance the institution's capability to perform R&D relative to NE's research, NE's missions. So the main thing to do is focus on a single synergistic goal or capability. Try to avoid things like several unrelated equipment requests that don't necessarily meet the goal of this FOA. And try not to duplicate existing capabilities if possible. We do have a link there to the NSUF infrastructure website, but the main thing is to make sure we're not duplicating capabilities in some sense. And obviously, one of the main things, go back one, sorry, one more thing to say. Try to list any specific DOE any R&D programs that are relevant as well. All right, go to the next slide. All right, so this, we're getting near the end of my slides, is that if you have any technical questions, they can be submitted to Brendan, who talked earlier. And then any procurement questions can be submitted to Andrew Ford, who is the DOE ID contract specialist. The application site is neup.gov, and there'll also be a Q&A section as well, which is provided here. And I think we'll leave this slide up for anyone to copy this down, but I believe the slides will be provided later on. All right, I think that's it from me. Great.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. We will go ahead and take any questions now.
Saw one application per institution. Yes, it is one for GSI. It is one application per institution.